How's it going, everyone? Behind me are our two hives. We've got two queens, Daffodil and Peony, and I've got my older hive, which is the brown box, which has a deep and a super, and I've got my white box, which is my newer hive, which has a deep and two supers. And today we are going to go through our third honey harvest. We've been beekeeping for 4 years, but the first year we didn't get anything. So this is our third time doing a honey harvest. We're going to compare and see the taste and the quantity of how much we get. So in this video, let's walk through preparing, harvesting, and tasting the honey. And we'll start off by going and getting into these hives and seeing what we have to harvest.
Alright, so first we inspect our hives the day prior to harvesting to count how many frames we have that are harvestable. That means I'll pull up a bunch of frames that have capped honey on them and mark them as ones that I can harvest and take out for the harvest day. And what capped honey means is that there's a wax layer over the cells of all the spots that are open on the hive, or on that one frame. So I'll take that frame, and if it's 80 to 90% capped, meaning that almost all the little cells that are on one side of the face are covered with wax, then I can take that for harvesting. And we're trying to find frames that are primarily honey. So if the cells aren't capped, then that means the honey is still nectar, which means the bees have yet to close the cells because they have not yet dehydrated enough of that nectar, making it into honey. And what we're looking for is to have an 18%, I believe, moisture content in that honey. So they need to continue to remove that moisture in order to make it shelf stable. So last year when I checked our honey, we had about 16%. And this year I'm assuming it's around maybe even a little bit lower because a lot more of these cells were capped this year. And in total, I found one full super, which had about 10 frames in it, and 3 deep frames between the two hives. So in total, we had about 13 frames to harvest from, and if you minus one is completely cut comb. So about 12 will go in the extractor and spin the honey out, and the other one will just cut the honeycomb out, and we'll put it in jars of honey to sell or just to eat ourselves. The next day, all the fun began. Emily hopped in to help me select the frames and gently brush off the majority of the bees, and then leaf blow the remaining ones off prior to sticking the frames into coolers. We did this one by one to make sure we wouldn't be transporting any of the bees into the harvesting room. It's a sticky enough mess to deal with. We don't need any bees flying around and drowning in honey while we're working. After about 45 minutes, we'd finally got all the frames rid of bees and packed away in the coolers, and we're ready for transport. Fortunately, our beekeeping mentor who taught us everything we know is close and has a honey extractor that we can use. And this is where the real fun starts. There are a few phases to this process, but we'll start by placing each frame on top of a screw to hold it in place above a 2-layer tote that has a filter. We use a knife to take off the top wax capping and let it fall down into the top container where the honey will separate from the wax and be stored below for later retrieval. By removing the wax capping from the frames on each side, we are allowing the honey to pour out. And it does that in the extractor, except for one foundationless frame that I talked about before, which is complete honeycomb. And speaking of honeycomb, the bees made this entire frame of honeycomb within a month. It was absolutely crazy to watch. Every time we came back in, the bees were continuously just building on this one little tiny spot where I put a little popsicle stick and a little tiny bit of wax, and they just filled out the whole thing super quick. Anyways, once all the frames are in the extractor, we slowly ramp up the speed over about 15 minutes to let the momentum shoot all the honey out. And bees form their honeycomb with a slight tilt upwards so the nectar won't fall out. So by placing the top of the frames towards the outside wall, it will help the honey to shoot out quite easily. While the extractor spins, we keep the bottom valve open and watch the mesmerizing honey pour out. By using a strainer, we can catch any honeycomb or bees that got stuck in there by accident, leaving us with a pure raw honey. After all the spinning is done, we empty out the frames to take back to the bees and tilt the rest of the honey into our bucket. At this point, we had around 3 or 4 gallons, I believe, but there was still a bit more to add. Remember the wax cappings that were dripping into the bottom tote? Well, now it's time to dump all that out, which gave us close to another gallon of honey. Last but not least is the wax. We add it all to a paint strainer and squeeze the remaining honey out prior to putting it into a jar to take home to render down for lip balm and salves and other good stuff like that. After cleaning up the harvest room, we hauled all the honey and frames back home to fill jars. In the end, we got about 4.5 gallons, which comes out to around 55 pounds, which is about 20 pounds more than last year. Slowly but surely, we're building up our honey yield numbers. Anyways, we took the frames back and put them in the hives. The girls love to lick the frames clean of any honey residual, and they also get most all their wax still intact, thanks to the honey extractor, which allows them to clean up the wax and start filling it with honey again. Once we got back into the house, we began filling jars, and this year we decided to do 8-ounce and 16-ounce jars. We also added some cut comb to a few of the jars, which is beautiful looking and also a fun little addition to add in for people who are trying to get them for gifts and things. After getting sticky and filling up a little over half a gallon for ourselves, we were still left with 38 8-ounce and 12 16-ounce jars to sell. We'd love to keep it all, but we don't go through that much in a year, and beekeeping can be a little expensive, so this helps with the yearly costs. Unfortunately, we aren't selling off-island this year, and there are a few reasons for that. First off, we love to encourage people to buy honey from their own local beekeepers. And second, the shipping was very expensive and we didn't like throwing it on to people. So just go to local this year, and we hope you'll find some local options for yourself as well.
Anyways, that is it for our 2024 honey harvest. As you can see, we've got a lot of jars. We got 8-ounce and 16-ounce I talked about, and then we filled some other ones with honeycomb. And we also got this, which is our own little batch of hot honey that we're trying out. And we'll have a little bit of that for sale for people, or just give it to family and friends. But the one thing we have to do is try the honey. We have last year's, which is right here.
We got a little bit left.
This is all that's left from last year, and maybe like one little squeeze jar. And then Emily, you want to grab that one? That's about what we're gonna save for ourselves throughout this year before we go on a big trip. So let's taste the two and see what the difference is. Okay, Emily can grab that one. Go ahead.
So?
Yep. So that's last year's 2023 honey. Go ahead and give that one a little taste, and then I'll go right after you.
It's so sweet.
Yeah, this one's really sweet.
It like almost tastes like cough syrup, honestly.
It kind of has a little bit of like a coffee taste to it, and it's so sweet that it kind of like burns your throat a little bit. Like
you feel it on like the sides of your tongue.
Yeah, and it hits the back,
Yeah.
so it's like maybe a little sour. It's very sweet though. Okay, try the next one. That one's pretty fresh.
Well, this one's a lot thicker too.
Yeah, I think because it's really freshly harvested and that one's maybe been opened a couple times, the humidity has gone up and that one's thicker. All right.
Yeah, it's not as. It's still really sweet. It's just not like as sweet.
Yeah.
But that one kind of hits you more in the middle of your tongue.
Yeah, it's more like buttery, kind of like softer, sweet. It's like right on the sides, not like the back. Maybe like a little bit more floral.
I don't really even think they're like that floral though.
I feel like this one. Like what they do with olive dressing.
It kind of tastes like a honeycomb. Like
Yeah.
It kind of tastes like wax.
Yeah, like there's a little bit of like maybe like wax in it, but it's like the more buttery, a little less sweet. That last one kind of got me though. Yeah, it's nice to save a jar each time. I think it helps you kind of compare. So we've got another one down there that will be our 2023 honey, and then we'll save one for 2024 honey. But I just wanted to see, Emily, any comments about the honey harvest this year?
It was a lot easier this year than years past. I feel like we finally like are like in a groove of like what to do, and
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like as intimidating, but it is so much work to harvest honey.
Yeah.
I don't realize like how much work it is. Like you think it's just like pouring honey into jars, but it was like a 3-day process.
Yeah, you think it's gonna go fast,
And you have to do a lot of planning.
Yeah, and then you really have to make sure you have everything and get it going, because you don't want it to be exposed too long, and you want to just be quick with getting it in jars. But
Yeah.
a super fun process. It's one of the fun parts about beekeeping too, even though it's a lot of work. I think most
Yeah.
hobbies that like you work in, it makes it like rewarding. But
It's like the most like satisfactory part.
yeah, to see all that they did throughout the
Yeah.
year, and like kind of what you helped them do as well. But yeah, I hope throughout this video you got to kind of get a little glimpse into honey harvesting, what it consists of, the joy that it brings, and then just how much we love beekeeping and bees and the whole process. It's been like our best hobby. I always say it's like my favorite hobby, and Emily always says that she introduced me to it, so she takes credit for bringing me all this joy
Well,
through the bees.
I initially was the one who was like, we should we should reach out to this lady who does like beekeeping.
Yeah.
And see if we, and you're like, yeah, that'd be cool. I always want to do that. So.
Yeah, Emily's the catalyst of all things good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we, again, like I said, we'll be selling this just to local people. We want to encourage you to go find your own honey locally. But if you have any questions about this process, beekeeping, you're starting as someone new, we're going to be, having a new community we're going to be building on Patreon with a bunch of information just to continue to build a community there. But we also just want to interact with you in the comments. So please share anything that you love about bees or questions you have about the process. And we hope you have a good week, and see you later. Thanks for watching.
Bye. Bye.